In honor of the end of the 2026 Milano Cortina Winter Olympics, I'm looking back on another old-school Sesame Street from the 90s, starring one of my favorites, Slimey the Worm. In this episode, Telly, Luis, Maria, Gordon, and the kids are sitting in the courtyard to watch Slimey compete in the Worm Winter Games, broadcast live from Squiggleville, France, and hosted by former MLB catcher and Fox Sports broadcaster Tim McCarver, alongside of Oscar and 4 other Grouches from other countries, including France, Czechoslovakia, Italy, and Kenya, who cheer on and coach their worms. It's kind of like the Slimey to the Moon series, where it's a group of international worms. And it's funny how Tim announces Slimey as the worm from Sesame Street instead of from the United States. It does show how broad and diverse Sesame Street really is. It might as well be its own country. All of the Grouches immediately start arguing over whose worm will win before the opening theme. The first event of the Worm Winter Games is cross-country skiing. But since the worms are very small and it would take a long time for them to ski across France, they instead ski on a map of the country. And they even have a little Eiffel Tower there too. Once the event begins, Slimey struggles just a bit, only in second place behind the French worm. But then Slimey suddenly collapses. However, he gets back up right away, only to continue to fall over and over again, and is beaten by French worm Mademoiselle Escargot, to the delight of the French Grouch. Before the next event, Maria offers lunch to everyone. Telly, however, worries about Slimey's progress in the games, asking, "How can you think about lunch at a time like this?" But Gordon is on board to help Maria prepare sandwiches at Hooper's store, while Luis, Telly, and the kids stay behind to watch Slimey compete in the up and downhill ski race. The first worm to compete is Squishta from Czechoslovakia, who makes it all the way to the top of the mountain and down to the finish line in only 13 seconds, which, according to Tim, is the worm's world record. Slimey is next to compete, getting booed by the Italian Grouch, but cheered on by Oscar. Slimey makes it to the top of the mountain, and back on Sesame Street, everyone watches while having sandwiches. But right before making it to the finish line, Slimey trips, and despite making it to the finish line within the same time as Squishta, Slimey's fall gets him disqualified. Oscar criticizes Tim for this, but Tim tells Oscar to take it up with Judge Rehnquist. In other words, Karen the Grouch demands to speak to Tim's manager. In the speed skating event, Slimey is up against Kenyan worm Wiggles. Tim goes over how the event will work, and Oscar chastises him for taking too long, wanting to just get it over with. But Slimey falls off the course, but gets right back up, trailing behind Wiggles. Slimey keeps falling off the course, but eventually makes it ahead of Wiggles, who very impressively is skating backwards. But once again, Slimey takes a fall, and Tim comments that he might not be able to catch up to Wiggles. Annoyed, Oscar comments, "Will you put a sock in it, Gabby?" Slimey and Wiggles eventually skate a full lap without Slimey falling until the final lap, when Slimey's 5th fall costs him the win. Oscar still takes pride in Slimey doing his best, especially with all that yakking going on. Even back on Sesame Street, Gordon takes pride in Slimey trying his hardest, despite not doing very well. Telly starts to worry that maybe Slimey isn't winning because he is trying too hard. Before the Luge event, Tim interviews Oscar about Slimey's poor performance in the games. Oscar defends Slimey and is excited to see him compete in the Luge, considering that sledding is Slimey's favorite sport. Oscar tells Tim that Slimey learned how to sled when he was a baby, when he tried to take a nap in a bottle cap, but it slid off of an ice cube. Slimey loved it so much that when he was older, Oscar bought him a worm-sized sled to practice with in the snow, and in bowls of ice cream in the summer. However, almost immediately after starting, Slimey slips off of the sled. Tim comments, "I guess he's still got some practicing to do." Ooh, I hope Oscar didn't hear that. Next, the final event, shape skating, the hardest of all events in the games. Tim explains how it works. The worms have to make 3 different shapes on the ice without falling down. Yeah, poke the bear known as Oscar. Slimey is the first to take the ice. Slimey performs some very impressive tricks and successfully skates the shape of a square and a triangle. However, when he tries to skate the shape of a circle, he once again falls down. The agony of defeat. At the closing ceremonies, the Grouches grovel over Tim being the one giving out the medals, or stars, and boo each worm except for their own when the stars are given. For skiing, Mademoiselle Escargot. For up and downhill skiing, Squishta. For speed skating, Wiggles. For luge, Squiglerini from Italy. For shape skating, Wigglechev, the worm from the unified countries. Tim looks at Oscar when he announces it like he's trying to piss him off. However, Slimey wins a gold star for being the new world champion and falling down. Well, at least he's giving Slimey some encouragement, with everyone back on Sesame Street cheering Slimey on. Slimey would continue his athletic abilities later on. He would compete in the Worms Summer Games in Season 26, with Tim McCarver announcing yet again and Oscar chastising him. I'm thinking about doing a look back on that when the 2028 Olympics happen, so I won't spoil anything about it. I do remember when I was a kid the VHS tape Slimey's World Games, and I couldn't get enough of it. Slimey would also compete for the Worm Cup in soccer and in the Squirmadega car race in the 2000s. I can easily say that Slimey is my second favorite character on Sesame Street, and I really love the idea of him as an athlete, especially by having so many international worms included. So that's it for another old school Sesame Street. I hope you enjoyed, and if you've been watching the Olympics, I hope you've been enjoying that as well. So I'll see you next time, and I hope you're having a great weekend.